Gives himself a 1 week ban equals vacation. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the real Squid Games. American Congress, am I right? But all right. Government shutdown looms as planned, backed by President-elect Trump, also known as President-elect Elon Musk, fails in Congress. And it failed partially because of the Republicans, because the Republicans can't get their ducks in a row, can't get their house in check.
So it's a government shutdown just hours away if Congress cannot make a deal. Yesterday, a plan supported by President-elect Donald Trump was killed when dozens of Republicans joined the Democrats to vote against it. This is House Speaker Mike Johnson, his second attempt at a deal. The last compromise had bipartisan support, but was killed after opposition from Donald Trump and from billionaire Elon Musk, who the Democrats are complaining is having way too much influence. Scott McFarlane is on Capitol Hill with the very latest. Scott, good morning. This is such a saga.
Oh, Gail, this is a potentially dangerous political standoff with hundreds of thousands of federal workers and people who need government services and government benefits hanging in the balance, and President-elect Trump thrusting himself right in the middle of it.
The bill is not passed.
Trying to escape a federal government shutdown ahead of the holidays, Congress instead slammed into a dead end.
We will regroup and we will come up with another solution.
After President-elect Trump and billionaire Elon Musk, who's been tasked with cutting government spending, blew up a compromise plan both parties supported to keep the government open. House Republicans tried a different plan last night, less expensive, still including billions of dollars in disaster aid for hurricane-devastated communities, but cutting priorities for Democrats, including health programs. And the new bill included Trump's demand to raise the nation's debt ceiling for 2 years before he even takes office. Trump championed the proposal as a success and good deal on social media. But the bill fell far short, with dozens of Republican members not on board.
Not going to go vote for another debt ceiling increase without actual specifics on what the cuts will be. That's a non-starter for me.
And Democrats almost all opposed.
The Musk-Johnson proposal is not serious. It's laughable.
It's just horrific that they have thrust us into this kind of chaos already.
As the clock ticks down, it's federal workers who may end up paying the price.
It brings on anxiety, especially during this time of year.
Aaron Barker works for the TSA and is a union rep at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport.
We are definitely praying and hoping, fingers, toes, whatever you can cross, that it does not happen.
And he warns even though TSA officers are essential employees and remain on the job, there could be shortages if some don't show.
It could be very bad if it gets to a point where TSA workers have to choose between, am I going to feed my children, put gas in my car, or come to work because they're without a paycheck. That's definitely going to affect the way that passengers travel throughout the nation.
Here's an ominous sign. The day
So you were trolling me when you said you wouldn't talk about Elon? I often missed context clues. No, I am going to talk about Elon, man. What the fuck? Yes, I'm going to talk about Elon Musk. Of course, he is playing a formative role in this back and forth, in this process. Isn't it literally on the fucking... It was in my blast off tweet, man. Jesus Christ. Oh, my God.
Begins with both parties blaming each other for this impasse. And when he left the Capitol last night, House Speaker Mike Johnson was asked if a new plan would make it to the floor today. And he responded, "We'll see." Tony, we will see.
Hardly inspiring, Scott. Thank you very much. For more on President-elect Trump's demands, let's...
Okay, let's do some basics. Let's start up from the top, okay? Let's start from the tippy top. What is a government shutdown?
Well, here we go again. The government is heading toward a possible shutdown, and it's the third such threat in just 5 months. In fact, money for some government agencies will run out in just 2 days if Congress does not reach an agreement. But what does it all mean?
As you guys know, Congress has up until midnight. This is a video from 9 months ago. The last time they passed a continued resolution funding bill to fund the federal government. Okay, this bill funds the federal government until today, actually, midnight tonight. Congress has until midnight tonight to come up with a way to fund the government, or the federal agencies will shut down, meaning hundreds and thousands of federal employees could be sent home, or even worse, stay on the job without pay just ahead of the holidays. Now, originally, the Republicans had a bipartisan plan that they ended up abandoning to prevent a shutdown after President-elect Elon Musk, alongside Vice President-elect Donald Trump, came out against it. They were railing against it. Trump told House Speaker Mike Johnson to essentially renegotiate the deal days before this deadline. Okay? And in the last couple of days, there's been a lot of back and forth. And the Republicans did that. They were like, all right, well, our God King Elon Musk wants us to renegotiate this, so let's put it together. And in the revamped continued resolution, they took out a bunch of funding for absolute necessities, funding for rural hospitals, funding for like child cancer research, just like insane stuff. Okay, things that you might look at and go, why is that in a continued resolution? Now that's understandable. We're like, why is that in the federal funds? Why is that in the federal funding bill for the government? And part of the reason for why it's because that's just how we fund things. The other reason is because continued resolutions are must-pass bills for the most part, obviously, and a lot of people add on things that they desperately need to fund into bills such as this one, because if you're oblivious to the way Congress operates, unfortunately, nothing gets passed in our legislative body unless it is unlimited funds to Israel, unlimited funds to the military-industrial complex, or, I guess, messaging bills that make it so that it's illegal to hurt the feelings of Israel. Things of that nature get passed, but everything else does not, which is why this has to get passed, and which is why a lot of people will add things on to these must-pass bills. And sometimes Republicans like to take things out that are necessary from these sorts of bills. All right. One of the many ways in which you can nuke a bill and force people to renegotiate. There's certain ways that they do this. One is a poison pill provision. Usually they'll add on like something so unacceptable and so insane to the bill that no one on the other side is going to agree to it. So then you go back to the drawing board. Other things that, Republicans will often do is I guess it's the reverse of pork. Pork is what they consider unnecessary spending tacked onto this bill. Usually it's stuff like FEMA, additional funds for disaster relief, things that people need. Republicans would call that pork to say, that's just extra stuff that you want to add on there. Who needs that? Right? Except people do need that. But this back and forth obviously has pushed this otherwise the continued resolution bill that would fund the federal government into this weird limbo. But what does it mean if the government shuts down? A government shutdown happens when Congress doesn't pass legislation, either temporarily or more permanently funding the government, and such a measure isn't signed by the president. And the government shutdown would start if Congress doesn't approve this continuing resolution or a permanent spending measure by Friday. When the fiscal year ended September 30th, Congress passed a temporary funding bill to keep the government in operation, and that measure is expiring tonight at midnight. But you might be wondering which government agencies would be affected by this shutdown. Each federal agency has its own plans and its own budgets. They have their own ways of dealing with a shutdown, but basically any government operation deemed non-essential would just simply cease happening. They would stop it. And hundreds of thousands of federal employees' work would be disrupted. Like if you're in a federally funded, publicly funded research lab, for example, and you're no longer getting paid, you might have to abandon your research. Sometimes when you abandon that research completely falls apart. These are some of the many ways in which a full-blown government shutdown would devastate American society in relatively intangible and somewhat invisible ways. Okay? Sometimes workers are furloughed, meaning that they keep their jobs but temporarily don't work until the government reopens. Other federal workers may stay on the job, essential workers, but without pay, with the expectation that they will be paid back in full once the government reopens. The conversation around government shutdowns happen fairly frequently because America has a very unique debt ceiling process where there's always a back and forth, a political football, if you will. Okay? The basic rules for who works and who doesn't date back to the early 1980s and haven't been significantly modified since, under a precedent-setting memorandum penned by the president at the time, Ronald Jebediah Reagan, the Antichrist himself. His budget chief, David Stockman, said federal workers are exempted from furloughs if their jobs are national security related or if they perform essential activities that protect life and, of course, more important than life, property. Essential government agencies like the FBI, the Border Patrol, and the Coast Guard will remain open. Transportation Security Administration officers would continue to staff airport checkpoints. The U.S. Postal Service also won't be affected because it is an independent agency, but national parks and monuments would close. Troops would stay at their posts, but many civilian employees and agencies like the Department of Defense would be sent home. Court systems would be affected too, with civil proceedings paused while criminal prosecutions continue. Automated tax collections would stay on track, but the IRS would also stop auditing tax returns. Now, the government shutdown won't affect Social Security checks. Recipients of both Social Security and Medicare would continue to receive their benefits, which are part of the mandatory spending that is not subject to the annual appropriations measures. Doctors and hospitals would also continue to get their Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements, so do not worry about that front. But it's possible that new applications won't be processed. During government shutdown in 1996, thousands of Medicare applicants were turned away daily. You might be wondering what a continuing resolution is, and that is when Congress is down to the wire on passing measures to fund the federal government, the term CR often comes up. It is a temporary spending bill that lets the federal government stay open and operational before Congress and the president have approved a more permanent appropriation. A clean CR is essentially a bill that extends existing appropriations at the same levels as the prior fiscal year, which was the original clean CR bill that was put up that Elon Musk and Donald Trump had issues with, apparently. Elon Musk especially had issues with it. But we shall see in this last minute scramble. AOC was saying on Majority Report that this is happening over the debt ceiling now because Trump's tax cuts are up for renewal next year, which will increase the deficit. Republicans, Elon, are getting ahead of it. Yes, I suspect that a big part of this is because Donald Trump wants to make the tax cuts permanent, the ones that were supposed to be sunsetting, specifically for middle class and poorer Americans. And he won't just do that on its own. He's not going to use that as a standalone to be like, oh, yeah, we're going to also make the tax cuts for the working class permanent. He will most likely use that as an opportunity to say, we're making those tax cuts permanent while also offering additional tax cuts to corporations. There's an idea about there's an initiative to lower the already incredibly low corporate tax rate down to 15%. So this is most likely a measure to make sure that there are no hurdles in front of Donald Trump, at least up until the midterm elections. This is why Donald Trump has come back and claimed that he wants to push this new bill. He wants to push a bill that is close to the clean continued resolution. that actually isn't the same at all. They took a bunch of those. They took a bunch of funding initiatives out of that, and are forcing them to be standalone bills. But also, funding for child cancer research, things of that nature. But also, perhaps most importantly, they want to increase the debt limit, the debt ceiling, until January 2027. The reason why they want to do that is because Donald Trump does not want to have these back and forth battles while he is the president with the Democratic Party. This is obviously a weapon, not dissimilar to the filibuster in some ways, that the minority party, the party not in power, can use to their advantage to make sure that they get their spending priorities across. Now, part of the reason why Elon Musk has also been pushing for this, according to David Dayen of The American Prospect, is because Elon Musk has factories in China. There's a mundane reason for the late-term chaos, and it's called conflict of interest. David says this is the first scandal of the second Trump term, and take a long look because it's going to look like all the other scandals. A conflict of interest among his impossibly wealthy advisors and aides, or for Trump himself, seeping over into policy. The measure at issue is known as the outbound investment provision. We have heard for years about the problem of manufacturing businesses shipping jobs overseas to China with its low worker wages and low environmental standards. China typically forces businesses wanting to locate factories in its country to transfer their technology and intellectual property to Chinese firms, which can then use that to undercut competitors in the global markets with state support. Now, of course, American capitalists know this. They are not oblivious to this reality at all, and they have voluntarily done so. Make no mistake, when Americans talk about China stealing our IP and you're a regular old consumer, that has nothing to do with you. Okay? That has nothing to do with you. American corporate oligarchs knew that this was a reality. It was a firm handshake commitment that they would take advantage of low wages in China and ship manufacturing overseas to China, make China the manufacturing hub of the global economy. And part of that was that they would give Chinese companies their intellectual property with the, dare I say, Orientalist, racist notion that these barbaric Chinese workers would never be able to keep up with American technological innovation. And well, it turns out in 2024, China has not only kept up, but as in some of the key sectors that they have been focusing on since 2015 under the leadership of Xi Jinping, they've actually become sector leaders. And now that those chickens are coming home to roost, the American labor force is completely gutted and destroyed because our capital owners have voluntarily moved manufacturing over to China, and China has developed at a rapid clip with a much better redistribution of the foreign capital that has come into the Chinese marketplace. China is now no longer just a global competitor, but actually a global dominator in key sectors. This is part of the reason why American manufacturers or American capitalists are very frustrated, very scared. It was a gamble for them. It was a gamble for them, and the Genghis Gambit actually worked in China's favor. Now, Congress has been working itself into a lather about China for years now, and they finally came up with a way to deal with this issue. Senators John Cornyn and Bob Casey have the flagship bill, which would either prohibit U.S. companies from investing in sensitive technologies in China, including semiconductors and artificial intelligence, or set up a broad notification regime around it. The bill would add some reporting requirements and enhance reviews as well. In general, it expands restrictions that the Treasury Department has already put forward in their regulatory rules. Codifying those rules in the statute means they cannot be changed by successive administrations. Cornyn and Casey passed the Senate last year, and after about a year of legislative wrangling, a final outbound investment package made it into the year-end bill. we're taking a necessary step to safeguard American innovation against bad actors and ensure our lasting dominance on the world stage, Cornyn said in a statement. Problem is, Elon Musk has manufacturing facilities in Shanghai. Elon Musk's car company has a significant amount of outbound investment. A Tesla Gigafactory in Shanghai opened in 2019. Maybe a quarter of the company's revenue comes from China. Musk has endorsed building a second Tesla factory in China, where his grip on the electric vehicle market is completely loosened amid domestic competition. He is working with the Chinese government to bring full self-driving technology to China. In other words, importing a technology they may be seen as sensitive. Musk has battery and solar panel factories that are not yet in China, but he may want to build them in China in the future. You can argue about whether the U.S. should be restricting investment in China, says David Dayen, but it's incontrovertible that a billionaire who has a bunch of investments in China and wants to make more all of a sudden disrupted a normal congressional process that was going to restrict that investment with a bunch of lies from his media platform. And lo and behold, when the new funding bill emerged, the outbound investment feature was dropped. In fact, all traces of provisions related to China were removed from the bill. Now, whether you agree with continued investments into Chinese development and Chinese manufacturing or not, does not change the fundamental problem at play here. A billionaire with a clear conflict of interest was able to take a legislative provision that has been on the docket, a bipartisan legislative provision that has been on the docket that is trade protectionist or somewhat isolationist, okay, and nuke it into orbit. What's even funnier about this is that this is supposed to be our global enemy, okay, our universal enemy, the number one enemy of all time, the Chinese government. And yet, the otherwise reactionary Republicans are completely oblivious. Normally, if you were to turn around and say, what the fuck? This is a limiter on American corporations that want to work in China. This is restrictions that already exist through the Treasury Department that we are codifying through the legislative body to ensure that our really sensitive IP is not falling on Chinese hands. This is something that Americans talk about all the time. American corporate leaders talk about it all the time. Oh, China is stealing our lunch money. They're stealing our innovative products. They're stealing our technology. And with all of this unrestricted xenophobic sentiment running rampant, despite the fact that, you know, Americans are hypocritical and self-centered, people are oblivious to this. And it's actually the same dynamic that I've talked about quite a bit with respect to who's a good billionaire and who's a bad billionaire. Now, I have a principled stance on this. I don't think that any billionaire is quote unquote good. I don't think anyone is good or bad. They're just operating on self-interest under a capitalist system. And the reality that billionaires even exist is a significant failure of policy in my assessment. Okay? Having said that, however, Republicans don't understand the world in that way. And neither do Democrats, really. Liberal Democrats and liberal Republicans both have a different partisan approach. They think some billionaires are bad and scary, and some billionaires are good and champions of the people. Now, I wouldn't even say that the Democratic Party is so on board with like good billionaires and bad billionaires to the same degree that the Republicans are. Republicans are severely anti-billionaire when they've decided a billionaire is a libtard. They hate Bill Gates, and they claim that Bill Gates is vaccinating the children because Bill Gates wants all the kids to be gay and autistic. There are many real reasons to hate Bill Gates, like the fact that he has, behind closed doors, virtually dismantled American public education and rebuilt it in his own vision, and I think that was devastating. That's a real adequate way to shit on Bill Gates, but Republicans don't know that, and Republicans think that they're actually in line with the policies of school choice, for example. But at the same time, there is an autistic billionaire that wants to put a fucking chip in your brain. That autistic billionaire's name is Elon Musk, and yet the Republican Party thinks Elon Musk is a champion of the American people. It blows my fucking mind. You think Bill Gates wants to make you autistic with a vaccine chip? Elon Musk is literally working on Neuralink, and yet Republicans don't understand that. They're like, they don't realize. They're like, oh, the government's surveilling us, brother. They're surveilling us. Okay, Elon Musk is literally a defense contractor with a surveillance mechanism. Peter Thiel, Palantir, that is a surveillance company. So many of the billionaires in Trump's orbit are the exact cartoon villains that you present libtard billionaires as. Now, this isn't to say that those libtard billionaires aren't doing a whole bunch of awful things that ruin your lives as well. They certainly are. But it's hilarious to me that they just refuse to comprehend that their guys are doing this too. Okay? Do you support surveillance? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Anyway, so that's the Elon Musk part of this equation that I wanted to briefly touch on. So on the one hand, the major point of contention here is obviously to eviscerate the debt limit until 2027, the January 2027, so that Donald Trump can do whatever the fuck he wants to without any sort of setbacks that the Republicans, or not the Republicans, that the Democrats can use to their advantage when Trump becomes the president. But there's also other provisions that were taken out of this bill specifically so that Elon Musk can continue working unrestricted in China, continue operating in China. Just so people understand. So, that's what a government shutdown is. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what is the debt ceiling? Well, let's do that too.
The American government spends more than it collects in taxes and must borrow the difference. For years, investors have gladly lent money to the federal government by buying treasury bonds because they are confident the United States always pays its debts. But what if it didn't? The threat is real. Under the law, Congress must periodically raise what's called the country's debt limit, or the government won't have enough money to meet its obligations, such as paying interest on bonds or delivering checks to contractors, soldiers, or Social Security recipients. The debt limit is easily misunderstood. Raising it does not authorize new spending. It simply allows the government to borrow enough to pay the bills Congress has already approved. Not raising the debt limit is like ordering an expensive restaurant meal and then refusing to pay when the bill arrives. The United States has always avoided a crisis by raising or suspending the debt limits, about 80 times since 1960. But the risks look higher this time. House Republicans see the debt limit as leverage. Why
are you playing lib-ass videos? I mean, it's an explainer on what it is and why it exists. I don't know why you're frustrated by this. It's a 2-minute video. You'll be fine. Okay. Now, should the explainer on what it is and why it exists, I don't know why you're frustrated by this. It's a 2-minute video. You'll be fine. Okay. Now, should the debt limit exist? I don't agree. I don't think it should, and seemingly Donald Trump doesn't think it should either. Having said that, however, while it does exist, it is a very valuable political weapon for the Democrats to use. And the thing is, the Republicans don't want to do that, and they never will do that, as a matter of fact. But overall, the United States is the only country with a debt limit. The United States is the only country with a debt limit that is close to the debt it has. There are some other countries that have a debt ceiling, but it's it rate adjusts year over year, and it's so high that it's virtually impossible to reach it. Yeah, Denmark has one, but it's 200% of its GDP.
Are threatening to raise it only if President Joe Biden and Democrats agree to spending cuts. They did not hesitate to raise the debt limit when Republican Donald Trump occupied the White House. Since then, the federal government's debts have grown even larger as Presidents Trump and Biden spent heavily to support the American economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. The government reached the $31.38 trillion debt limit in January. The Treasury Department can use accounting maneuvers to delay the day of reckoning, but not indefinitely. Democrats and Republicans may not be able to resolve their differences and raise the debt limit before the clock runs out. If that happens, the government might have to prioritize spending, paying some bills but not others, and making agonizing choices such as who gets paid first, a Chinese bondholder, say, or a senior who relies on Social Security. But the result could be a blow to the United States' reputation for honoring its debts and could risk triggering a global economic and financial catastrophe.
I think it's funny because it's just like a made up, in my assessment, especially in a country like the United States of America, is a completely made up limiter that we've decided must exist. And it's yet another political hurdle where both parties can use it wield it as a weapon against the other because the threat of a shutdown is severe, right? And nobody wants to be responsible. Nobody wants to be held responsible for the shutdown. Part of the problem here is that the Democrats are currently in office. I mean, they own the White House. Joe Biden is the president. However, as we all currently understand, Joe Biden is not really alive. He's basically in a vegetative state. So the Republicans are kind of holding the bag, so to speak. So this is a politically tumultuous moment for them because they are left as the singular sole responsible party for everything bad that happens. So that's it. It's like a self-inflicted wound that Republicans squeeze every time they need something. Yeah. They certainly don't mind it when, Donald Trump is president, of course. So I do want to cover I also want to cover the Joe Brandon video as well. Like not the video, sorry, but the Joe Brandon coverage that came out of Wall Street Journal yesterday, talking about how they managed this geriatric man's declined mental faculties. But yeah. But before we do that, President-elect Trump discusses possible shutdown in an exclusive interview.
Bring in Robert Costa, who spoke with the president-elect by phone yesterday. Bob, good morning to you. So Trump and Musk kill one bill, then they put one forward. Congress kills that bill. Now we're at this impasse. What exactly does Donald Trump want out of this, and what's the strategy now?
Good morning, Tony. When you step back and look at this spectacle, it can look like a spending fight. But for President-elect Trump, it's about more than that. When I spoke with him by phone yesterday.
Yo, you were against raising the limit yesterday. What happened, brother? No, I'm in favor of nuking it. But also, as it stands, I'm not in favor of nuking it currently. I'm not in favor of nuking it without any assurances. I'm certainly not in favor of nuking it, or rather, not even nuking it, but passing a increase simply for the Republicans to be able to push their agenda when the Democrats are not in power. Do you understand?
yesterday, he made it clear that he wants an extension or elimination of the debt ceiling. That's the federal government's borrowing limit, so he can have a clean runway come 2025 when he wants to pursue legislation on immigration and border security and tax reform and not having to deal with a debt limit showdown. So this is about setting the stage for next year as much as it is about getting a spending package through.
Speaking of setting the stage, some people were referring to Elon Musk, who helped kill the first version of this bill, as the first buddy, but now they're saying, no, he's actually President Musk. What does what happened in this case tell us about what could happen in the next 4 years?
It's intriguing. There's a bit of a divide in President-elect Trump's inner circle. Some privately tell me Musk is flying a little bit close to the sun, but others say he put a lot of money into this campaign. He's friendly with President-elect Trump, and right now he's trying to help Trump enact his agenda on Capitol Hill, and that Musk is pretty safe at this moment. And Musk has spent a lot of time building relationships with members of Congress as he tries to get that caucus going, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, come next year.
Hey, Bob, before you go, yesterday, a Georgia appeals court disqualified Fani Willis and her entire office, actually, from overseeing Trump's election interference prosecution in that state. How did the president-elect react to that news?
Well, you won't be surprised. He was very dismissive of the Georgia election interference case and of Fani Willis. When I spoke to President-elect Trump, he said the case wasn't a real case, and now it's off his plate. He still faces a bit of a legal challenge in New York with his conviction there, though it's uncertain exactly how that's going to play out. The judge has not dismissed the case at this moment or the conviction, but Trump's lawyers continue to fight it.
All right, Bob.
Musk must be emptying out his pockets. Oh, wait, he has infinite money. Yeah, and it's also an incredible investment. Every single time he spends money in any direction is a fantastic opportunity for him because he gets a return on that. Musk's net worth is entirely reliant on his companies or the way that people speculate about his companies. So him having this like broad power over the federal regulatory agencies and being in Trump's pocket actually causes people to go, oh, I'm going long on his companies. He's going to go to the moon. That also contributes to his net worth. That's precisely the reason why he added billions of dollars to his net worth since the election. There's also, exactly, promised federal contracts at play here. Not only does he rely heavily on government subsidies, but he also gets regulated by the government regulatory agencies. He can now demand more subsidies if he wants to. He can do whatever he wants. We've basically made the richest man on the planet the God King of the United States of America and therefore the planet. And it's, I guess, a more direct relationship than the indirect one that already existed. Okay? These guys already controlled the federal government. They already controlled the regulatory agencies by way of revolving doors from, Congress to K Street, Wall Street to K Street. But now they have a much more direct line. Donald Trump is a malleable and very corrupt individual. He doesn't give a shit. It's great if you come to him and you kiss the ring. He's going to give you anything you want, really, depending on how much you pay for it. It's just how it works. Because no way it's more sophisticated than that. No, it's not. It's not more sophisticated than that at all. It literally is that simple. I'm not even being reductive when I say Elon Musk has direct access to Donald Trump and has direct control over the federal regulatory agencies. Every single federal regulatory agency has unironically prosecuted Elon Musk. Like from OSHA to the EPA, like every single regulatory body has in some way, shape, or form investigated Elon Musk. Now he has control over all of them. So it's just cutting out the middleman. No need to spend money lobbying when you are in the White House. Yeah. This is why I always say in China, the government controls corporations. In America, the corporations control the government. In China, when the richest man tried to tell the government how to function, he had to go on a long vacation, and then his company was taken away. Food for thought. Yeah. Where is Mr. Alibaba? Nobody knows. He had to go away for a while and then come back and sing the praises of the leadership. Where is Jack Ma? Someone might ask. He went on a long vacay.
I can't give you the update yet. I got one more detail. I got.
I will say this much: I do enjoy watching Mike Johnson sweat a little bit because he is such a little freak. Okay, he is such a little freak. So personally, I do appreciate him sweating and on the political chaos and instability caused by his own party. So, it's wonderful. Let them fight, I say. Republicans who are so one note and so one speed and so hyper invested in running obstruction are, once again, obstructing themselves.
We have a unified Republican conference. There is a unanimous agreement in the room that we need to move forward. I will not telegraph to you the specific details of that yet because I've got a couple of things I got to wrap up in a few moments upstairs, but I expect that we will be proceeding forward. We will not have a government shutdown, and we will meet our obligations for our farmers who need aid, for the disaster victims all over the country, and for making sure that military and essential services and everyone who relies upon the federal.
That's so funny when they talk about that stuff because, like, okay, you think like we don't need rural hospitals to be funded? Like, there are so many things that the Republicans advocated to cut out of this CR bill that are just as necessary as the things that they're pointing to. And the irony, of course, is that Mike Johnson would have been super happy passing a clean resolution or a clean CR bill that was basically a continued resolution that already had concessions made that the Democrats had given to the Republican Party, including limiting the funding of the IRS. Like, the Republicans literally clawed back IRS funding in the previous CR, in the previous continued resolution. So Democrats had already played ball with these Republicans, which is precisely the reason why Mike Johnson wanted to pass that with ease. And then Elon Musk came out and tweeted 122 times over the course of 24 hours about how devastating this was, about how angry he was that this continued resolution was going to go through. And they shut that shit down.
Federal government for a paycheck is paid over the holidays. I'll give you the more details here in just a few moments.
Have you talked to President-elect Trump about this? Have you talked to the President-elect, Mr. Speaker?
Guys, please heads up. Heads up issues. Make way. Sir, is there a vote this afternoon and what time?
Very likely, yes.
We start, of course, on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers are scrambling to figure out a way to keep the government lights on through the holidays. About 30 minutes from now, House Speaker Mike Johnson will try to sell his colleagues on what we are now told is a three-part plan to fund.
Oh, this is also the best part. This is anecdotal from people I know who work in politics, but the vibe on the Hill at the moment is super bad because everyone wants to not be there and want to be home for the holidays. This is the age-old trope in Congress, is that Congress hates working in general, and we all know that, but they especially hate working around the holidays. They will literally, you can get shit that you never thought would get passed through because none of these old, wealthy pieces of shit want to be in Washington, D.C. during holiday season. They want to be back home. So they will quite literally make concessions that you consider unimaginable, like red lines. You'll be like, what? How did they get this passed? They got to pass because they want to be home. They hate working. Major point of contention.
The government and do so through March. Now, one notable aspect as of now is that it does not include what the president-elect Donald Trump had wanted in the first place, which is a plan to raise the debt ceiling now. CNN's Manu Raju joins me from Capitol Hill. Tell us more about this plan, and the obvious question is, will he have enough votes to pass it?
Yeah, that is the big question, but we now know they are settling on a plan to essentially move these pieces of legislation separately. Remember, this is all tied together as one big package to keep the government open, along a whole wide range of other issues. Roughly $100 billion in aid for natural disasters that have hit across the country, aid directly to farmers who have been hit by bad conditions and the like. And Donald Trump injecting that last toxic effort to raise or suspend the national debt limit. He asked for that in the 11th hour. That scuttled that bipartisan deal earlier this week. But we are now learning, according to our sources inside a closed-door meeting with the Speaker of the House, that they plan to separate out each of these bills and move them individually. That would include a 3-month extension of government funding, a $100 billion disaster relief package, and a $10 billion farm package. Now, here's the other catch. That push by Donald Trump to suspend the national debt limit will be set aside because they simply do not have the votes to move it ahead. That's because of opposition, not just from Democrats who believe that they would allow Donald Trump to move his agenda next year if they were to agree to that now, but also conservative Republicans who don't want to raise the national debt limit. So now this is the big question. Will Democrats support this? Because Democratic support is necessary. And I caught up with Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, ahead of a closed-door meeting, and he indicated for the first time in recent days that negotiations are ongoing.
Lines of communication have been reopened. We're going to do everything we can to avoid a catastrophic government shutdown.
Do you think that there's any appetite at all to give Republicans something on the debt limit?
On the debt limit?
Yeah.
No.
It's a total red line for you.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. The debt limit, the reason he's trying to do that is so that he can pass Trump tax scam 2.0 next year and not have to worry about the fact that it's going to drive up the debt by another several $1 trillion.
So this would force, given the Democratic opposition to the debt limit and also conservative Republican opposition, Donald Trump will essentially have to concede on what he has been demanding for the last couple of days. The question is, how will Trump react to this? I am told that there's going to be a Republican agreement to try to move on the debt limit next year, not deal with it this year. And Dana, where will the votes ultimately come down? The other discussion is, will they vote tonight on this using a procedure that would require 2/3 majority of the House to advance it, meaning a lot of Democrats are to support each of these individual bills in this separate vote strategy, or wait till tomorrow and try to do it along party lines.
The Dems would raise the limit if they were a majority and won the election. Yes. I like that the one instance where the Democrats are playing good politics, everybody gets mad when they're like, what do you mean? They're being hypocritical. It's like, yeah, dude, that's politics, baby. Yeah. No shit. And the Republicans would be on the other side going, absolutely not, absolutely not, absolutely not. We care about fiscal responsibility here. It's ironic because there are some Republicans out there who are just like anti-CR no matter what. They're just like fundamentally at odds with funding the federal government. Okay? They just don't fuck with that. They're there to blow shit up. Not because they're like fiscally responsible. Of course, those same Republicans unconditionally will offer support and demonstrate fiscal irresponsibility when it comes to, was just stating the obvious, all good. Yeah. Those very same Republicans would also not care if it was tax cuts. Don't make no mistake. But yeah, they can play good politics when it doesn't affect my ability to buy food. Yeah, you're right, man. Well, don't worry. Your ability to buy food is going to go away anyway, regardless, when the Republicans are in power. Okay, so for the time being, I think it's important for the Democrats to hold strong on this in an effort to force Republicans to concede, without offering up, unlimited spending to the Republican Party. It's so funny when people are just like have no capacity to see beyond themselves, where they go, you don't understand. It's affecting my ability to eat. Okay. Hopefully I'd have a different job and not rely on a government check. No, I understand. But this is not on the Democratic Party. This is on the Republican Party. My point is, the Republicans were down with a continued resolution of the clean CR bill originally. Elon Musk and Donald Trump blew it up. And now you're going to fucking yell at the Democrats for not immediately showing their bellies? Get out of here. Go yell at the fucking Republicans. I'm not even like a partisan person, as you guys know. The reason why they want to maintain this as a weapon to wield against the Republican Party is so that they can still continue adding funds to necessary programs while Donald Trump is the president. The current CR bill is not bipartisan, yes. But the clean CR was, even though there were already many, many concessions that the Democrats had given to the Republicans to pass it. Mike Johnson would have loved passing that clean CR. And he was close to doing it. Until Donald Trump and Elon Musk were like, nope. Absolutely not.
Or during a separate procedure. That would be past the shutdown deadline at midnight tonight. They plan to huddle behind closed.
I'm not partisan, LeMonFayal. I mean, it's true. If you ask many other content creators online, they fucking cry all the time about me even going to the DNC, despite the fact that I got kicked out of it for all of my unjustifiable criticisms of the Democratic Party. I'd love to be partisan. I'd love to be the propaganda minister. If the Democrats got their shit in order and started behaving like a competent party, I'd be the number one partisan guy, okay? But just because I'm not partisan doesn't mean that I'm not going to defend the Democratic Party if they do something that is appropriate, do something that is right. That also doesn't mean that I'm going to unconditionally say everything that Democrats are doing is good.
Closed doors at 12:30 Eastern, Dana, to try to figure out their way forward.
I'm confused why Trump and Elon wouldn't want the bill to pass, though. I mean, Elon had a couple things that he wanted to take out of it, some of which we just brought forward, specifically the provision that has been matriculating for the past year that would basically solidify the already existing provisions, already existing treasury-backed control mechanisms about investing in China. That would turn this, that would basically solidify it, make it permanent by way of Congress. Elon Musk didn't like that because he has factories and potential investment operations in opportunities in China. TSA should screen each one of these elected officials aggressively. They have a nice flight. Merry Christmas. Describe what a competent party would look like going forward. I am describing it. A competent party going forward would take advantage of every fucking media opportunity. Whenever there's a mass shooting, they would be loudly talking about how the blood is on the hands of the Republicans that stand in front of common sense gun control, for example. Common sense gun control that the people want. 75% of NRA members are on board with universalizing background checks, for example. Things of that matter. A competent Democratic Party would take advantage of the media landscape surrounding the anger, the very obvious anger that the American people have in their hearts for for-profit healthcare. A competent Democratic Party would not be beholden to their corporate benefactors in the insurance industry, and instead would be beholden to their voter base. You know, behave a little bit like the Republicans, as a matter of fact. That's what a competent Democratic Party would do. They would play politics in the same way that the Republicans do. They would be shameless about it. Except the Democrats only demonstrate shamelessness when it comes to, I don't know, pardoning Hunter Biden. They only do it for dumb shit. They don't actually do it for, good things. They don't actually do it to enact a legislative agenda that would be helpful. You're a partisan for what you think the Dems should be, not what you are. Yes. You're a partisan for a party that doesn't exist. The DNC thing pisses me off. Been a Biden appointee and older Dems are so out of touch. You're a partisan to a party that doesn't exist. I mean, it's true, though. It is true. I would be a partisan for a party if it existed. That's what I'm trying to say. Make no mistake. I would love for the Democratic Party to abide by not just my wishes, but the wishes of the broadest majorities of American people. Even if the American people are oblivious to what actually helps them, that is still ultimately up to the Democratic Party to communicate how that would be helpful for the regular American voter. Doesn't matter. This kind of stuff transcends party lines. In the words of Tim Walz, feeding the hungry, okay, feeding the starving, and offering shelter to the poor is not a partisan issue. Okay, it might be the Democrats that enact agendas like making sure that Democrats in the state of Minnesota, at least, enact the agenda that ends up funding school lunches, right, for free, paid for by the taxpayers. But ultimately, Republicans have children that have to eat as well. And that's it.
This is a movie with way too many sequels. I think we're done with this kind of theme, this kind of film. Thank you so much, Manu. Appreciate your reporting. Come back if you get any news, of course. And I'm lucky to be surrounded by a talented group of reporters, CNN's Jeff Zeleny, CNN's Lauren Fox, who, of course, was on Capitol Hill all morning, and Zolan Kano-Young of the New York Times. Lauren, I'll start with you. This three-part strategy to do it in bills that are separate in order to give Democrats and Republicans the ability to vote on different things. Can you explain why that matters, particularly when it comes to the bottom line at this point, which is keeping the government running?
There are probably some conservatives who hail from areas that were affected by the hurricane who want to make sure that they have an opportunity to vote for legislation to help their states and their districts. I think that is part of the strategy here. I also think part of it is just getting as many votes as you can on the items that people agree on and breaking this down. There was also some entertainment of whether or not they would add the debt ceiling as a separate vote as part of this. Clearly, that's not the strategy that they're contending with, but that was another way to sort of try to satisfy Donald Trump. So right now, I think this is one of those sort of, it's all the same bill, but it just looks a little different than it was before operations. Sometimes that works on Capitol Hill.
But some of the, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe we don't know this yet, but some of the funding for programs like kids with cancer and so forth, is that going to stay in here, or we just don't know yet?
I think the early reports are this is the slimmed down version of what that Tuesday plan was. Okay, that is the early indication. And I do think that for some Democrats, that could be a reason to vote no.
Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about the politics of this, because there's so many different facets to what happened and what is happening as we speak, and what it portends for in January, when there truly is full across the board Republican control. What is your read on it? What's your analysis of that?
Look, the analysis of it, clearly the first share of the blame rests with Speaker Johnson. By not having this sort of locked up early in the week, there were signs that this was going to be a problem over the weekend. And not just from, there's been, I think, kind of a misnarrative that, that the Democratic goodies are in here, which is true. But there was also, as you reported, a lot of farm state Republicans who were wanting farm aid in there and hurricane assistance. So there was a lot of grumbling. I started hearing